In today's episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to the 2004 film The Manchurian Candidate. The Manchurian Candidate is a neo noir psychological political thriller with a runtime of 2 hours and 10 minutes. The director is Jonathan Demme, who I'm unfamiliar with any of his previous works. This movie stars Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, Liev Schreiber, John Voight, Kimberly Elise, Jeffrey Wright, and Ted Levine. So let's dive right into The Manchurian Candidate, 2004. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Coming into the Manchurian Candidate, I had decently high expectations. Had this one on the list for a while. Was recommended to me by a friend who also recommended The Hunt for Red October. And yeah, I think this one was a miss, in my opinion. Now, let's get into this because there's a lot to go through with this one. This might be one of my longer reviews, which is crazy to say. I just had more notes to take on this one for some reason. Coming in, like right after the movie, I'm like, well, that was, something. It just, the more I've thought about this movie, the less I've I didn't really enjoy many aspects of it. I have pretty mixed feelings about this movie. I do think the idea of it, this war hero who is like brainwashed and is trying to help this political candidacy is interesting, or like they have a kill switch where they can just make him go back to it. And it's a decent enough premise for a film. I just question the way this one was carried out. Looking back on it, nothing really, quite grabbed me and pulled me into the movie super hard. Through the entirety of the movie, in my opinion, there was nothing that stood out to be like, oh, this is, something I'm super interested in. Now with Denzel, of all the Denzel movies, which we'll talk about all the Denzel movies we've reviewed so far on this channel, this felt like easily like the worst performance. Like it wasn't even like Denzel was bad in the movie. It just felt like it was like kind of a waste of his acting skills. He had little to no personality in this movie besides being like a kind of a shill for the Manchurian company, I guess. And then that just made it semi hard to connect with him on a personal level. Like I was never really like quite rooting. Like obviously it's Denzel, so you're rooting for him a little bit, but it's like I wasn't like, oh my god, whatever happened at the end. Like I just didn't really care what happened to him. And Denzel in these other movies is always funny. Like he's giving out one-liners. He's got that good like charisma about him. This one just feel like they didn't let him go free. I felt like he was almost stifled in his role. That's just kind of how I felt about that. Overall in the movie, the way we were presented events, I thought was a little bit odd as well, with the reveal of the twists early on of them being trapped in this like lab in the middle of nowhere, and then being brainwashed, and then it kind of is constantly there throughout the movie, but isn't like ever expounded upon or focused on. We don't understand like a bunch of things, which I'll get into in a bit, but it just seemed kind of odd the way we presented things, where they were like trying to tease it, but it's like you're already teasing what we are trying to find out, kind of. Like it just felt like a weird presentation of the movie. I thought also the big bads of the movie weren't explained that well. We don't really know much about this Manchurian Candidate until like the last like fifth of the movie, like the last couple of minutes, like the last half hour of the movie. So it's like, why, like I get it, it's like this, the Manchurian Candidate could be like either the Republican or the Democratic Party in today's society, right? But like I don't know, it'd be nice to know what their motivation is to get their guy into office, and why they're trying to do this, and why they're doing this to military guys. And it felt odd. The guy who played Shaw, I thought was a complete bot, which I think that's what you're kind of going for in this character, who's just going to follow the orders of everyone, not really want to make his own splash. But it was hard to feel anything towards him as well, with his character having no emotion at all throughout the movie. And I was going to grill this movie for the random Rosie love interest, but that was actually somewhat a surprising twist, with her being part of the FBI and recording conversations. So I will give them credit for that one. That was like one of the cooler aspects of the movie, and we're kind of picking at straws here, but I did like that part of the movie. I do wish the throwback scenes they did show us early on and throughout the movie were a little bit more put together, as we only see flashes and glimpses of what happened mostly throughout the movie. It was like, here's them for like 2 seconds, and then we're just going to cut back. Here's Anthony Mackie like getting shot, and then we're just going to come back to nothing. Like, here's Nick Sabaka getting, strangled and whatever. It's like, why that those were the, like, two impactful flashbacks, but the other flashbacks is like, I'm here for 2 seconds and we're back to like the present day or whatever. So I didn't really like, I'm gonna stop harping on the throwback scenes, but I don't know, felt like weren't getting the full story there. Bunch of questions. So I mentioned earlier the questions I had. So how did they get there? Because we see them at the beginning of the movie, they're doing this operation, and then all of a sudden it's like something happens, and then they're just taken to here. Like they somehow all got captured. I don't know how that's possible. I'd like to see how it was possible. Why were they there? So we see the doctor. Obviously, it's the Manchurian Candidate, but like, or the Manchurian company. But why specifically that doctor? What did he want to do with them? What did they wanted to just brainwash them into killing each other and then making someone vice president? Like, I thought that didn't really make much sense either. What was the motivation of the doctor specifically? I kind of mentioned that one. I just feel like there are some gaps in the viewer's knowledge about this movie that kind of made it a hard watch, and kind of made the story not flow that well. I also do think some of the parts of the plot were pretty slow, and I couldn't keep my full attention on it. Unfortunately, I am a screenager sometimes, and I'll fully admit that. Luckily, when I go in theaters, I don't look at my phone, but I don't know. When I'm at home watching a movie like this one, Pluto TV, by the way, we can fucking get into Pluto TV. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't keep full attention to this one. I wasn't like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? I don't know. I was on my phone a little bit. I won't lie about that. Maybe that brought down my ratings. If you want to say you're a fraud because you're on your phone a little bit, don't fucking lie to yourself. If you're at your home and sitting in your bed, you do check your phone a little bit. But I don't know. I couldn't. Like Arrival, I don't think I looked at my phone once. Like, even I'm remembering Backdraft, I didn't look at my phone once. Like, there's movies that keep me interested. This one did not keep me that interested throughout some of the middle of the movie. Then there's the fucking ending of the movie. Holy shit. I just think the ending of the movie was kind of a mess. So you have Shaw and his mom dead, which is fine because they're supposed to be like kind of the villains in the movie. We don't like them. But the sequence in which it happens just felt sort of off and kind of random. And now Marco is going to shoot the vice president instead of the president because why? He has his orders to kill the president. I guess it's because they stand on the star. It's like, come on, dude. And then the fake out with Marco being shot and then living and going back. Like, I get it, but he's going to be tortured the rest of his life probably about this. And I don't know how he's going to get off the record about this when he just like basically assassinated the vice president. I don't really see that one working out, but I don't know. And of course, Rosie's there with him to guide him. So overall in this one, you can probably tell I'm not that high in it. The premise I thought was interesting. Denzel's performance was okay for what it was and what the lines they gave him. But besides that, there weren't many positives and memorable moments from this one. I'm giving it a 5.7. It wasn't great. The more I think about it, like, I'm glad I gave it this score. I think it's a pretty accurate score. I didn't love this movie at all. Would not really recommend anyone to check this one out, even Denzel fans. Like, you're not getting a good version of Denzel in this movie. There's a million other Denzel movies you can watch. So where does this come in on the Dubcast graphic? This is our number 60th movie out of 66 movies reviewed. So in the bottom 10, unfortunately, bottom 6, 7 movies reviewed up to this point on the Dubcast. 66 movies in, we're good. Moving on to Denzel movies. So this falls behind Training Day, which is one of my top tier movies of the Dubcast so far, at 9.1. American Gangster is also a Denzel movie, get that an 8.1. Man on Fire was a 7.3, and The Little Things was a 7.6. So worst Denzel movie so far. However, this does beat out All the President's Men, which is a 5.2, both political movies technically. So there's your one happiness thing for people of the Manchurian Candidate who like that movie and are watching this review. So with that being said, we'll get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the movie. This might take a while. I have a lot of stuff to say about this. It's probably all going to be boring. No, keep watching. We love the Dubcast. Okay, I don't know why I'm doing this. Okay, moving on. So to start this movie off, as you know, Dubcast special, always review the beginning of the movie because I mostly forget what happens at the beginning of the movie. So the beginning of this movie is pretty memorable, to be honest. Like, if I had to pick the beginning of every movie, like if I had to take a quiz in the beginning of the last 10 movies I've watched, this would probably be like an easy one to be like, oh, pencil that one in. It's the guys, what they're doing, whatever. So we have a bunch of soldiers. They're playing cards and betting poker in Kuwait in 1991. And so they turn it off and open the door and stop playing. They're like having fun, like shooting shit with the boys, blah blah blah. And then Sad Man opens the door. I'm guessing this was Shaw, and they stop playing and stop having fun. So you can tell right off the bat, there's a little bit of a divide here. Maybe that's what led into the Manchurian people picking him to become the eventual vice president and the eventual candidate they're going to push. But this was kind of little bit of a weird intro. I didn't love it, but yeah, we're diving right into here. So what else happens? So after this happens, they're hanging out, doing their thing, doing their army thing, and they get ambushed in the middle of the night. And our boy Marco gets knocked out. So Denzel, like, obviously we're fucking with Denzel. I don't know if there's many Denzel army movies. I wonder if that's a thing, because I know there's like, I'm sure the man's in everything, but why do I have like an image of him in a army suit? Not suit, uniform. As like a commander. Is that Equalizer? No, I don't know. Anyways, so Marco is knocked out, and meanwhile Shaw is potentially going one-man army and taking down the helicopters also, which, duh, idiot, that obviously didn't happen to the view. Like, I don't know why I didn't catch on to that right away. I wonder if there were like visual clues that this was kind of a cap, but it's like their version of the story, right? Which is like the main, like, I don't know, I need to stop saying, like, the main thing that makes them dismiss what they saw is like the story that they think is true of Shaw just going one-man army and also taking down the helicopters, which, like, I think he had a strong machine gun though. It was believable, guys, I swear. Anyways, we fast forward to the present day. Marco is doing a presentation to the Boy Scouts, and someone comes in on the cafeteria where they're presenting, and it's a man named Melvin, who also worked in the, or I don't want to say worked, was also in the army with Marco, and asks him if he wishes he could have been the hero instead of Shaw. And, this is a tough question to answer for anyone, because Shaw obviously sacrificed a lot, killed a lot of people we just saw, took down helicopters. Would you want all the glory in order to, I know people worry about the people they've killed as well. So this is honestly a pretty deep question. But we're not going to pontificate on it too much. It's not that important. So he asked him if he wishes he was the hero. Marco gives kind of like a baseline answer, and then after the meeting, Melvin's waiting for him outside and confronts him. He says he has PTSD dreams, and Marco's like, dude, you got to go see somebody about that. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then offers to give him money as well to, help out with whatever's going on. But Melvin does not want Melvin does not want money. So a little bit of an interesting scene there, but we learn a lot more about what happens with Melvin later on throughout the movie. So meanwhile, the person who saved everyone, Raymond Shaw, we learned is his full name, he is attempting to become a presidential candidate. At least I thought he was going to be the actual president, but it's going to be vice presidential. Makes sense that they have like a Democratic nominee, and they're kind of doing the thing where they need to find a vice president. Like, if you remember in the 2024 election, we had Trump was looking for a vice president for a while, and Biden was, I think Biden was going to go. Biden dropped out, so it doesn't matter. But they have that process where they know the nominee, but the vice president isn't announced yet, and the president has to figure that out. So I think this is at like the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention, and they're looking for that one vice president to, really send the ticket home and get this across to America. So Raymond Shaw is going to be the one who's trying to become this vice presidential candidate. And we learn his mom, who a lot of people drew comparisons to one Hillary Clinton throughout this movie, is trying to do backroom deals for her son to move up and become this vice presidential candidate, because the powers in Washington do what they do. The powers that be do what they do. And yeah, she's able to give a passionate speech to a room full of people working the campaign. Seemingly there's the people who like decide everything, and voila, he gets the vice president spot, of course. And then Marco recites a line that Melvin says in support of Shaw when he's reading or seeing this on the news. So this consistent line that's being said, I forget what the exact line was, but It's kind of like a trigger and what they were like taught to say after the torture and all of that stuff. So that should have been a clue early away, but viewers are dumb, man. I'm dumb. I'm sorry. So back to the flashbacks now. Big WTF. We're just like thrown into this flashback. They're in the experimental lab where they're being told to say the same thing over and over again, which is the same line that Melvin told Shaw or Melvin told Marco, and Marco said after seeing Shaw on the TV. So we're getting a little bit of at least it's somewhat linear here, where it's like we see them saying the line. So why do they say the line? Because of this. And they have Shaw kill Baker in the experimental lab, where this was like, fuck, man, 0 to 100 right off the bat. And yeah, that was scary. Where Army guys are never supposed to kill their own. Obviously, it happens in rare circumstances. See my brother's review. See my wolf hunter. No, not deer hunter. I don't know why I said wolf. It happens, okay? But this wasn't even like a torture. This was like a brainwash where they just tell Shaw, go kill Baker. And Shaw's like, okay, I'll go kill Baker. Wahoo. And very odd brainwashing crew around them, as there's women with face paint walking around with brains on their brains in their hand. Ugh, very uncomfortable scene. I didn't like these people at all. And they're in like the middle of Kuwait as well. I'm good, bro. But fuck, man, that was a crazy scene. Kind of a WTF. So Shaw is a killer. He's killed one of his colleagues. Meanwhile, in the present day, Shaw, he has a love interest throughout this movie as well. A woman who he broke up with before he was going into the politics and before he was going to the army. And then he gets pissy with Marco and doesn't want to talk to him after this woman comes up. And yeah, Shaw and Marco's relationship throughout this movie is very odd as well, where seemingly, you'd think they'd be trauma bonded together after the events of the beginning of the movie, but now it's like, seems like they don't really talk much. Obviously Marco doesn't talk to Melvin. Seems like maybe they fell out of touch, so it's a very weird relationship. Moving on, Marco is in a room with other army officers explaining what happened with Shaw and the real truth of it as he's remembering it, but they do not believe him, of course, and tell him to take more medicine and stay clear of Congressman Shaw. So one thing I can assume is that Shaw, being this military hero, probably had the political backing of the army. Henceforth, no matter what Marco was going to say here, they wouldn't believe him. But we need someone to believe Marco, man, because it's Denzel Washington. He's telling the fucking truth. I didn't care that much for Denzel's character. Moving on. So Shaw is in his suite, and their trigger is so weird as well for when they're hypnotized. They answer the phone and they just say their full name, which I don't know if I've been told my full name, like including middle name. So maybe that is a good one. If someone was just like says your full name including middle name to you, that's when you get hypnotized. Like, how many times would you guys get hypnotized by regular people? Maybe at like the bank or something. I feel like that doesn't come up that much, so maybe that's not that much of a nitpick. Anyways, he's in his suite, and then he picks up the phone, and they're like, Raymond James Shaw or whatever, and he is then hypnotized to go open a secret door in the suite, and there's just a testing lab there, and he's getting a checkup, seeing if everything's good, if the brainwashing material is still holding up, and he's like happy as a clam sitting back in this surgery chair. Very odd scene. And they're putting an implant into his head, so his new programming on how to bullshit America and become vice president is my guess. But just a very odd scene of him walking into this like secret compartment. Meanwhile, Marco had photos taken of him and then breaks into Melvin's apartment. So Melvin's apartment's fucking batshit. There's drawings all over the wall. There's pictures with Shaw's face scratched out, newspapers, articles, and all the rehearsed statements that they were told to say all over the walls. It's very chaotic. It's very psychotic. Clearly he's gone through something. And now Melvin is gone because he doesn't answer the door for Marco. So I wonder where Melvin is. Moving on. Marco is continuing on his mission to take down Shaw. He gets on a train and is approached by the grocery girl. So we see him in a grocery store at some point previous to this scene. Has like a decent interaction with this bagger lady. And she meets him on the train, which, should have been coincidental as to, maybe I just wasn't like locked in and being like, oh shit. But her name is Rosie. And then Marco crashes out once he meets her, which is like Marco has terrible Riz. Obviously, he has PTSD. I don't want to, I'm not going to go on a terrible Riz rant. He imagines a bullet wound in her head, bleeding. So maybe this is like a flashback to what he saw in Kuwait. And then he's approached by the doctor in the bathroom. This is very, I don't know. And then, of course, she literally gives him her phone number. I was like, come on, dude, get yourself together. Get yourself together, son. But no, I mean, okay. I should have seen the signs here where it's like, why is she simping for him so hard? But, sometimes when women fall in love with people, and sometimes when men fall in love when men fall in love with women way more often, they get obsessed, okay? We definitely have known that if you've lived a life, that people can definitely be obsessed with other people. So maybe she's just smitten with him after one grocery appearance. I mean, in today's America, I wouldn't put that past people. So he's come back to himself in her apartment and then showers at her place, takes a nice shower. Okay, that's nice that she let you shower there. And then he cuts his back open to take out an implant that goes down the sink. Terrible game plan. You're at this woman's place, and that's when you're going to take out the implant, bro? Go back home and do that shit. And then to leave the open sink, do it right in front of the open sink, at least be like, if I'm taking a government implant out of myself, maybe I should check to see if there's any holes nearby that this could easily fall into. But of course, plot holes, or plot armor. The implant falls into the sink, so he doesn't have it. And this sets him down another tirade where he's going to once again meet with Shaw. Doesn't share his experience initially, and then Shaw says he doesn't have dreams. So maybe he's just been smoking a lot of weed. Weed makes you not have dreams. I don't know how I know that, but no, I mean, it's true, guys. Anyways, so Shaw doesn't have dreams, which is suspicious. And then Shaw has Marco in to eat food with him. He doesn't remember doing it himself, the fake story that they have of him being the war hero. He doesn't remember taking down helicopters, which you'd think, even if you have like crazy PTSD, that you'd at least remember some of that, but Shaw doesn't remember any of it. And then Marco makes his move. He goes for the back of Shaw because he just pulled the implant out of his back. So he's like, I'm going to get your implant too, bitch. He doesn't say that, but he goes for his back and tries to see the implant, but it doesn't work. He does bite him and gets arrested, which is crazy it's crazy they just let him walk through here and no, it's like security clearances or anything. And they're like, yeah, have lunch with this guy. And then he just tries to bite like an implant out of his back. It's absurd. But Marco is properly arrested. That's psychotic behavior. That's like an assassination attempt. So very close call for Shaw. And the mother now the senator is now pushing Marco to be a bad guy to Shaw. This might have been Shaw to Marco. I don't know. But Marco is relieved of his duty. And there does seem to be one woman at all these meetings taking very careful notes. I thought this was an astute observation from me of this other woman who's like not Rosie, but another woman who's taking these very careful notes. I guess it's just like they're trying to show you like a decent looking girl taking notes. I don't know, because she doesn't come up again. But Marco did have an implant that he bit out of Shaw, so there is an implant. I mean, we already know there's an implant in Shaw's head, but there's one in his back as well. And throughout this whole movie, Marco's also had this like tech guy who's been, helping him with the chips and helping him with the implant stuff, get the vocabulary and all that, or not the vocabulary, but just like what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And so he goes to his tech guy and does ECT, which is electric cognitive therapy, maybe, and then remembers more about his operation. So we find out that he was actually part of this as well. The implants, obviously, he pulled one out of himself, so there was the operation done on him. And he wakes up in the park. with Rosie talking to him, and we find out Marco was killed in another flashback scene, or Marco was forced to kill someone in another flashback scene when he was brainwashed, shooting him with a pistol in the face. So, Marco's not clean in this either, unfortunately. Well, he is clean because he was brainwashed, but he's got some demons in the closet as well, which sucks, but, it happened. Big bra moment, big reveal. Rosie was wearing a wire this whole time and was recording all the conversations that Marco had with her. He brings it to another senator, all of this stuff, and tries again. He's still trying to get Shaw implicated, and that senator just immediately brings it to Shaw and Shaw's mom. He did strike a chord here where you see the mom and Shaw panic a little bit, and then he's been having a dream. Marco's been having a dream, and then, or no, Shaw is having a dream, and then the mother forces him back into the loop using the code word. So this is a big threat for Raymond and his mother. So what do after they brainwash him? They have the vice presidential candidate himself. Now, I don't know if you have Goonies in the Democratic or Republican Party, I forget which one it was, to go get these people. But to send Raymond himself, the vice presidential candidate, to a lake to try and kill this senator and his daughter, what? That was like, why? That was the dumbest decision of the movie. Could have easily implicated him and just been very, regardless, we ball. So the senator and his daughter, they have a very nice relationship. This is also the same girl that Raymond was simping over, but he's in brainwash mode. And Raymond is out in the water, just wading kind of deep into the water where they're canoeing, and just drowns the senator. And then the girl who he loves sees him from afar, is like, "What are you doing, Raymond? Hey, Raymond, what are you doing, Raymond?" And then he drowns her as well. Brainwashing, am I right? And this would be like if we woke up to the news and saw J.D. Vance murdered another senator and his daughter. We'd be like, what the fuck? That would be one of the biggest news stories in history. Obviously, I don't know who it is, but it's DNA. 2004, man. I don't know. Feels like we could have easily solved that. So that was the craziest. That was just, yeah. That was the shark was being jumped after that scene. But we still have to wrap this movie up. So Marco, he's kind of lost all of his allies, and he's lost all of his bids. Everyone he does his bidding with ends up dead. The senator and his daughter ended up dead. So who does he go to see? It's Rosie. He wants to confront her, but she has a gun and says she is the feds. There was an implant device in Melvin. So I guess they were doing some testing on Melvin as well. I think he wound up dead somewhere as well. They probably had Shaw kill him, I'm guessing, but there was an implant device in Melvin as well, so obviously they all got the implant devices, and Rosie admits to Marco that she's feds, so they're on decent terms. It's the day of the election now, and Shaw goes to vote, reads a note in the voting booth, and doesn't actually do anything in the booth, so I don't know if this is a call out to all the presidents who go and vote, but the presidents who actually vote, I think, do actually vote, but I don't know. All that we see Shaw do is just looking at this note and not do anything else. And who's there to meet him? It's Marco. I don't know. How does this guy, Marco should be in jail. I get he's a war hero, maybe. I don't even think he's, he does have medals, so maybe he's a decorated war hero, and they're like, all right, we got to respect this guy. But Shaw already knew that this was going to happen. And then they have Marco now in the code words as well. So they redid the, code words for Marco, and now he's back in the brainwash as well. So it's fuck, man, we're done. We're cooked, because they're both on the brainwash. There's no one to be the hero in our story. Then we get a very weird scene between Raymond and his mom. I'm forgetting the specifics of it, but they have a very weird relationship throughout this movie. And so we learn the big scheme of the Manchurian Party is they are setting up Marco to take a shot at the president, so Shaw becomes president himself. Makes sense. You have no use for Marco. He's kind of just a pain in the ass, so might as well paint him as this assassin, get your guy Shaw into the presidential candidacy, which this felt early to do it at the nomination ceremony, where it's I feel like America today definitely would be hold up. I'm not sure we voted for that, but due process, legislative process, maybe it would just go through. And so the instant he becomes president, they just shoot him. But so Marco's got to take this shot. They're waiting for somebody to step on this star, and that's when Marco knows to do it. So obviously Marco is brainwashed, so you can't, you have to be very specific and be like, when they step on the star, and he doesn't know who's who, and whatever. So Shaw misses the foot landing, which Rosie sees him look up into the rafters. Rosie's in the building trying to get to the front of the stage, sees Shaw look into the rafters. She's like, oh shit, somebody's up in the rafters. Marco ends up shooting Shaw in the back, and his mother is hit collaterally, and then immediately he is shot by Rosie. So Shaw shot in the back, dead. His mom shot, or the shot goes through goes through Shaw's body, dead. Rosie shoots Marco, should be dead, right? No. But after all this, we get them reframing the murder onto Manchurian and editing Marco out of the security footage. So I guess Rosie was able to pull some strings and make it look like Manchurian did this. And then the Manchurian meeting room, who we don't know anything about, is just pissed off about this. They were introduced at some point, but they have literally 2 or 3 scenes, which I think makes this movie lack a lot of context. However, it happened. So our great and grand final ending, Marco is still alive. So, granted he was shot by a pistol and Shaw and his mom were shot by a long-range sniper. I don't know. He's still alive, and he brings Rosie to the exact spot where the torture operation took place. He leaves a picture of his squad there and the Medal of Freedom in the water. So the medal was capped, so I guess that makes sense. With the picture of the squad, they're all fucked. I think most of them are dead anyway, but it's a nice memory note. I just don't know why we needed Marco alive. I think this movie would have done better if Marco just died there. But he's still alive, I guess, and he's going to, if someone says his full name to him ever, he's going to be code worded. But yeah, that's Manchurian Candidate. Ending, I think we jumped the shark at least 3 times. Didn't really love this movie throughout. I thought most of it was pretty, subpar. If I don't want to be rude, but that's just how I felt about it. So what do you guys think of Manchurian Candidate? I know there's probably a better version, the 1962 version. I should have picked that one to watch, not this one. But we do what we do. Denzel, I'm inspired to watch Denzel movies. Even after this one, I'm still going to keep going, but not my favorite movie at all. What do you guys think? Am I wrong? Tell me why down below in the comments. So as always, we appreciate you checking us out here on the Dubcast. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, downvote if you want. Some people don't like the content that they see because I say something that, rubs them the wrong way. That's what we're here for. This is a Dubcast. It's open conversation. So feel free to do what you will with the video. Expect more movie reviews coming soon. We got Fantastic Four and Superman coming out, or Superman's out today as I record this video, but Superman, Fantastic Four in theaters soon, maybe F1. There's a lot of movies in theaters that I'm going to try and do reviews for. Besides that, I'll be doing some casual movie watching of random movies as well. TV shows, might have an announcement soon on the TV shows. I'm still deciding, but we'll see what happens. And then sports stuff is kind of dry as well, but you can expect an NBA offseason podcast in the future as well. So it's July. We're busy, summer stuff, but we're still chugging along here on the Dubcast. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I'll leave you out that. And as always, be easy, y'all.